going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Seattle Emeralds MyNBA series here in NBA 2K25. Now, I do apologize. The uploading a little slower than I anticipated. I got really sick with the flu over the last week, and it just really took me out. I haven't been able to record. I'm still not 100%, as you can probably hear through my voice a little bit. So, it's going to just be a slow process talking and trying to get through coughs and stuff. But today, I wanted to focus on our first draft outlook. Now, obviously, I'm going to release before the draft in the offseason another one of these videos, but I wanted to give you guys a chance to get to know a lot of these recruits and get to see what exactly the strong spots in this draft are and where this team, the Emeralds, or where we can go as a team in this upcoming draft. Now, I do have pretty much the top 8 guys at every position created, customized, and, not fully scouted, but I've got their scouting report written down so that we can know most of these guys. So we're just going to go down the list at every position and take a look at all of the top 8 guys at every spot on the board. To begin with, the top point guard on the board is 21-year-old shooting or small forward. The top point guard on the board is 21-year-old point guard, shooting guard, 6'4", out of North Carolina, Trey Washington. He's getting comparisons to Reggie Theist or Alvin Williams. I like to compare him to a very athletic version of Marcus Smart. He's very raw offensively, similar to how Marcus Smart was. He's a very good, seasoned defensive first guard who, in my opinion, has very high potential due to his athletic ability. This guy can jump out of the gym. He is a defensive menace, and with that athleticism, he can protect the boards, attack the boards, and protect the rim at the same time, as well as being a solid playmaker here for the Tar Heels. Now, obviously, Trey Washington is not going to come out here. He's not expected to come out here and be a Victor Wembanyama type guy. He's a 6'4", defensive and athletic guard, maybe like a Russell Westbrook type guy coming out of the draft with, lack of shooting ability there. He is a little bit older at 21 years old, so his floor is high, but his ceiling may not be as high as some of these other guys on the board. And his scoring ability does leave a little bit to be desired. Rad Ware is the second guy on the board right now for the point guard position, according to most outlets. He is a 6'4", 20-year-old guard out of Miami, Florida. He is compared to Baron Davis or Speedy Claxton. Now, that's a very wide range. You can go from All-NBA to bench player on that list. This guy, another uber athletic point guard. Rad Ware is just a crazy guard here with just insane athleticism and finishing around the rim. Now, he's a solid playmaker as well. As you can see, his top 3 talents or skills are athleticism, inside scoring, and playmaking. He really does well when he's down court, going down the court, getting downhill, and attacking the rim. Unfortunately for Rad Ware, though, lack of shooting, struggling to be consistent on defense. He's not a bad defender. He's just not consistent, are going to make it an interesting project if you draft Rad Ware. Now, I will say there are concerns as well about his frame. He's only 185 pounds. That's pretty small for a point guard in the NBA, especially at 6'4". So he needs to beef up. He needs to improve his shooting outside in the perimeter and his mid-range ability, maybe just to be a consistent NBA player. But just based off of raw athletic ability, inside scoring, and defense, maybe not consistently, but it's there when you need it. Rad Ware is one of the best point guards in the draft. Following Rad Ware up, we have Drew Carl. Drew Carl is a slightly shorter guard out of Maryland. He's 6'2", 20 years old. Got comparisons to World B. Free or Lou Williams. My comparison for Drew Carl is CJ McCollum with a little less shooting range, but slightly better playmaking abilities. We all know CJ McCollum is more of a 2-guard. Drew Carl takes that, gets rid of the shooting a little bit, and then also gets a little bit better on playmaking. So he's more of a point guard version of CJ McCollum. Carl is very strong in the mid-range and inside scoring zones. Very solid playmaker. Struggles to shoot it outside the arc consistently. Like I said, not as good of a shooter as CJ McCollum, but he does have a serviceable shot. He's not going to be awful, but he's not going to be a guy creating a three-point shot for his own despite his strengths inside the arc. Additionally, with his size, Drew Carl is one of the poorer defenders in this point guard class. He's only 6'2", 195 pounds. He struggles to stay in front of his guy because he's not the quickest guy laterally, so his athleticism isn't the absolute greatest, but he's got solid finishing on the, in mid-range jumpers, getting to the basket. Drew Carl is all around a solid prospect for that mid-draft range, sitting at 14 through 19 projected right now. Following him up, we have Ian Longley, the first 6-foot point guard on this draft. He's obviously a short king, but man, Longley can shoot it. He is 6 foot, 22 years old, 199 pounds, out of Southern Methodist SMU, as many people would know. And this guy can just straight up shoot. He is a sharp shooting shot creator, a laser shooter from 3 and from mid-range, solid playmaker who, maybe that's not the strength of his game. He's usually a scorer first. He is a very solid and serviceable playmaker, and also can get to the basket despite his height and finish around the rim. I really, really hope that Ian Longley can fall a little lower, because I would love to take a second-round pick on him, but I don't think he's going to fall that low. He's sitting around the 20 range when it comes to draft picks average. Unfortunately for Ian, though, as expected, not the most athletic, not the best defender at 6 foot, 199 pounds. He gets moved around rather easily by bigger guys. Quicker guys can get around him. And at 22 years old, he doesn't have much room to grow as an NBA player. But if you draft him, he's going to come in as a straight-up scorer. A lot of comparisons see him as a Fred VanVleet, a slightly worse Fred VanVleet, or a slightly better Seth Curry, or some good comparisons for Ian Longley. He's an elite scorer coming out of the draft, but not the greatest all-around prospect if you're looking for somebody to build around going forward in the future. There's other guys that are potentially better, maybe like a Kobe Reyes, the 6'3" point guard teammates with Rad Ware actually at Miami, Florida. These guys are a tandem in the backcourt there. Kobe Reyes is 21 years old, 6'3", playing for the Hurricanes. Reyes is a versatile inside-out scoring guard. He's a very solid guy getting to the basket, scoring there, athletic, good playmaking, and just versatile. He can play the point guard, he can play the shooting guard, and despite being a little bit undersized, but he does not have the shooting consistency that you would like. Similar to Rad Ware, both of these guys, surprisingly for the Hurricanes, neither of them are elite three-point shooters. Both of them can hit the shot to some degree, but neither of them are going to be like, wow, that guy is a spot-up, lights-out shooter like Ian Longley. Kobe Reyes, fortunately for himself, is slightly better of a shooter than Rad Ware, but still struggles with consistency shooting and some defensive consistency as well. He has the tools to be a good defender, but not the overall great defender that you would like out of your starting point guard. Following him up, we have Gabriel McKinney. Gabriel McKinney is a 6'3" guard out of Florida State, just 20 years old. 198 pounds. This guy is a very good scorer. He's got solid inside scoring, very, very reliable three-point shooting, similar to Ian Longley. And he's a good defender. He's a very, very solid defender, maybe one of the better defensive point guards in the draft, despite being projected as a second-round pick right now. McKinney looks to be a very solid prospect all around. I think he's got, a few weaknesses. He's not the greatest playmaker. He's not the greatest standalone shot creator. I mean, don't get me wrong, he can. Shot creation is definitely not his strength, though, and he's not the most consistent offensive player that you would hope for him to be. As we now get to the final few point guards on our board, we have Jamal Carter. Now, Jamal Carter, very solid, athletic, defensive-minded point guard. Similar to a few other guys in this list, not the greatest shooter, not the greatest playmaker, but he is athletic, he is quick, he is strong, he can get to the basket, he's going to dunk on you, he's going to finish around you, and at 6'5", he's very tall for a point guard. He's got Damon Stoudemire potential, and surprisingly enough, a lot of outlets compare him to a point guard version of DeMar DeRozan. Now, that might not make it complete sense because he's not a mid-range maestro, but he just plays like DeMar DeRozan would if he was a point guard. I mean, he's got great defensive instincts and consistency on the perimeter. He's going to get you steals. He's going to run the floor, and he's going to protect the rim at 6'5" as a point guard. Jamal Carter, just a great option if you're looking for somebody to, come in, guard up on the best player on the other team every night and just come out there and play well. As our final point guard we're going to take a look at is AJ Campbell. He's 6'6", 3-and-D guy. Campbell is 19 years old, so he's got a lot of room to grow out of Texas A&M. He is very athletic, very raw, but he's got solid defensive instincts, and he's just a disruptive guy on the defensive side of the ball. Three-point shooting, Campbell is not the greatest, not the most consistent, but he's got a smooth looking jumper that I feel like in the NBA will translate very, very well, especially in like catch and shoot situations. Don't expect him to come out here and be your number one shot creator, but expect him to be out there hitting three-point shots if you get him good looks off of the pass. And at 19 years old, maybe the highest potential of any point guard we've looked at so far, because he's got so much room to grow. Unfortunately, with that, obviously a few weaknesses. He's got a raw offensive game. His frame is not the best. 6'6" is very tall, but at 185, you would like to see him bulk up a little bit more. And with that, obviously, there's just some consistency issues. Really, a good comparison for AJ Campbell, in my opinion, similar to the DeMar DeRozan one for Jamal Carter. AJ Campbell looks like a point guard version of Mikal Bridges. This guy is long. He can play defense. I mean, he's got a 7'2" wingspan. That's crazy. You don't see that on point guards all that often. AJ Campbell, very, very good, solid option as a prototypical 3-and-D guy out there late in the first round or maybe early in the second round. As we can now get into our shooting guards for the draft, we are going to start out with potentially a top 5 draft pick in this draft, Musiala Cornacall out of Nigeria. He's 6'5", 21 years old, sitting at 204 pounds. Very elite two-way, 3-level shot creator here out of Nigeria. He's got scoring efficiency at every level, in the paint, in the mid-range, and from three-point range. And he's also a very, very good defender. He's got great instincts and great lateral quickness. Probably one of the better straight-up shot creators. Musiala is just one of those guys similar to like a Kevin Durant that you would expect him to come in and make shots for himself. He's just not nearly as tall as you would hope for a guy at the shooting guard position, sitting at 6'5", but he can play the small forward as well. He's just going to be a little bit undersized, but don't let the size underestimate. He is a very good defender. He's capable of defending multiple positions. Unfortunately, though, with that in mind, not the greatest playmaker. He can create for himself off the dribble, off the screens, all of that, but he's not a natural offensive facilitator. His vision and passing are okay, but not really a focal point of his game. Consistency-wise, he does have stretches where his shot selection can be questionable, maybe like you would expect out of a guy like J.R. Smith, but hopefully he won't end up in a role like that. He's going to have inefficient games with his decision-making lacking a little bit, but if he works for that, continues to improve, I have no doubt that he will become a very solid offensive player for whatever team drafts him, as well as he doesn't have the wow you athleticism as some of these other prospects at the top of this draft. If I had to give him a comparison, I very much think that Musiala is very similar to Chris Middleton. Just an all-around great scorer, solid defender, not going to wow you with his athleticism, but he's there and he is a great option if you have an early draft pick. Another guy that's there high in this one, he's ranging from 10 all the way to 2, is Olho Wombom, playing for the Liberty Flames. He's a 6'7", 215-pound, 21-year-old or 20-year-old shooting guard, small forward, playing out there for the Flames. This guy is a very good slashing option at the shooting guard position. He's got a great perimeter defense. He's a standout with his size, obviously, and lateral quickness at 6'7". Very athletic. He's going to wow you in transition. He's going to give you showtime dunks, showtime finishes. His vertical leap and agility make him a threat to finish above the rim no matter where he's at on the floor. His playmaking is very good for a shooting guard. Not something that you would expect. Unfortunately, everybody has to have their weaknesses. He's not the greatest shooter outside of mid-range and inside shots. He needs to be able to hit a little bit more consistently from the perimeter when he's not completely wide open. Offensively, he could use some polish to his game, and he does with how aggressive he goes towards the basket, he can turn the ball over a decent amount. He tries to force passes out, leading to turnovers, or he finds himself stuck in between a bunch of defenders, leading to turnovers as well. Comparison for him, I'm going to have to go Josh Giddey or DeJounte Murray, guys that never have had elite three-point shooting, but they emphasize, defense and slashing and getting to the rim, as well as playmaking with their game, emphasizing that for their game. Next up, we've got Chip Jenkins, a 22-year-old 6'6" shooting guard out of St. John's in New York. He is 228 pounds, so he's a pretty solid, hefty player here at the shooting guard position. Jenkins is a catch-and-shoot threat for whatever team drafts him. He's an elite three-point shooter, especially in catch-and-shoot situations. He's got a very, very reliable and quick release, and it's really insane how quick this guy can get his shot off with a defender maybe a foot away from him. Mid-range, very strong as well. Not as good because he's not a creator, per se, on offense. Perimeter defense at 6'6", 228 pounds. This guy may not be the fastest guy, but he's strong, and he can stay in front of his defender or in front of the guy he's defending, so he's very good at contesting shots with his frame, 6'10" wingspan. He's, good at fighting through screens, using his agility to get around those. And obviously with his frame, he's just a very physical shooting guard option for whatever team takes him. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, not the greatest creator, not the wow you athleticism type prospect. And at 22 years old, he doesn't have a ton of room left to grow. But he's not absolutely capped out, in my opinion. He's got a lot of options here for growth as a shooting guard in the NBA. Next up, we've got Rodney Moody, 6'3", 23 years old, 216 pounds, one of the older players in the draft. He plays for the Maryland Terrapins. Moody is a good scorer all around. 3-level scoring threat is what the 2K recruits say he is. Just a good guy getting to the rim, a good shooter, athletic, and he's very mature at 23 years old. So this guy has very high basketball IQ. Obviously, though, not the greatest playmaker. He's going to really go out there and score rather than facilitate at the shooting guard position, though maybe you can sacrifice playmaking for scoring. Defensively, not the most consistent guy, and similar to who we previously talked about, Chip Jenkins at 22 years old, Rodney Moody has even less upside because he is just 23 years old already coming out of college. If I had to compare him, I give Rodney Moody a blend of Norman Powell and Alec Burks. I think he's going to be a very good role player for some time. Don't know if he's ever going to hit the peak as a starter that Norman Powell has, but maybe one day, he will. He's going to give you scoring punch and athleticism off the bench potentially, but not really ever as a starter, in my opinion. I just wouldn't list him as a high-value starter in this draft. Next up, we've got Paris Hunt, a 6'5", 20-year-old shooting guard out of South Carolina. This guy is an elite shooter. He is a tenacious on-ball defender and just takes pride in playing defense against guards and other wings. He's got good size, good athleticism, good lateral quickness. He's a very reliable three-point shooter and scorer on the inside with his physicality. And as I mentioned, just a versatile guy. He can guard from 1 to 5. Paris Hunt can guard every position you could imagine. Weaknesses, though, not a creator on offense. He's not going to play make a whole lot, and he's just not a consistent night in, night out scorer. He's not going to be an offensive, lighthouse. He's going to be out there, play some really good defense, and just be out there playing team defense and team offense. He's never going to come out there and take over as your number one scorer. Next up, we have Anderson Tatum, another guy similar to Paris Hunt, who does need to work on some of his offensive consistency, but he is a 6'3", 20-year-old out of LaSalle, so it's a bit of a smaller school. He's a dynamic guard sitting at 6'3". He can slide over to point guard rather than playing shooting guard if you really want him to. This guy, very athletic, get to the basket at a very high level, and he's got solid three-point shooting. It's not elite, but he's very, very capable at it, and, with improvement, I think he could become a above-average three-point shooter in the NBA. Unfortunately, though, like a few of the other guys here at the shooting guard position, not going to move the ball around a lot, not going to be ultra consistent coming out of college. Obviously, with these young guys, you're not too mad at that. but his defensive impact does need a little bit of help there as well. He does have solid physical attributes. He's a little small, but he's got good IQ. He's just not the greatest defender on that side of the ball. As you can see, he's being projected to go from 36 in the second round as high as 12 in the first round. Very wide range. I think he's going to be a steal to whoever gets him, especially if they get him late in the first round or in the second round. Next up, we've got Bradley Kersey, another guy. He's got a pretty wide range. He can go as high as 22 or as low as 42. Bradley Kersey, in my opinion, without a doubt, the best shooter in this draft. He is a very smooth shooter. Catch and shoot ace is his archetype. He's a marksman from deep, good at catch and shoot, good at creating shots on the perimeter, similar to like a Grayson Allen type guy. Good mid-range shooter and a solid playmaker as well, and he's very mature for 22 years old. Defensively, not the greatest, similar to a lot of solid or excellent shooters. Athleticism, not the greatest. Ceiling, not the greatest, but he really reminds me to like a Duncan Robinson type guy, and I think, you know, similar to like Kyle Korver, except for out of LSU. I think Bradley can have a very good role in the NBA. There's always a, you know, opening for very good shooters, and he is no different in my opinion. He is a guy that is really, really strong when it comes to getting the ball and shooting. I think he has great instincts, I should say, for, you know, getting the shot up, getting it over the defender, and getting just a good look at the rim or at a shot, whether he's entirely open or not. And the final guy that I actually created, we'll have to look at a few other prospects before the draft happens as well that I didn't go through and edit, is Jalen Williams. Yes, another Jalen Williams. Hopefully the Thunder don't draft him as well, which I guess we have the other Jalen Williams, so it won't matter too much. But this one is 6'6", 235, 22 years old, playing for the Houston Cougars. This guy is a very, very physical 3-and-D shooting guard. He's a good shooter, a good defender, athletic, and versatile, guarding 1 through 5 as well. Once again, not the greatest creator, not the most consistent offensive weapon, but he's solid. He's serviceable. He's a very, very solid option late in the first round or early in the second round, in my opinion. He's very polished for a late first-round pick. I'm going to call him a mix of P.J. Tucker and Dorian Finney-Smith, a very good spot-up defender and shooter with defensive intensity and solid offensive options as well. And we're going to go through the small forwards, and then we'll call it a day here for this episode, and then we'll go through the power forwards and centers in another episode a little bit later. First up at small forward, we've got Cliff Russell. This guy is 6'5", 19 years old, 205 pounds. Russell, pretty much the unanimous number one guy. I mean, yeah, literally the unanimous number one guy out of UCLA. Russell is all-around scorer, good defender, not the most consistent defensive player, but solid. And he's a good shooter at the inside and mid-range. Could get a little bit better from three-point land. He's not the lights-out three-point shooter that you would like him to be. Also, does have issues moving the ball around, playmaking. But at 19 years old, Cliff Russell, undoubtedly the best player in this draft. I mean, he has LeBron James comparisons by some outlets. Adrian Dantley as well, which, don't get me wrong, is still really good. But he's got a very high ceiling. Cliff Russell, I think, is undoubtedly the first guy off the board. It's just a question of who has that number one overall pick this year. Next up, we have Tad Conley, though, 6'5", 212 out of Louisville. He's 20 years old. I really like to say Tad Conley is Kevin Huerter and Duncan Robinson type role, similar to we saw with Bradley Kersey. This guy is a lights-out shooter and a very solid defender. Not the greatest, but he's active and disciplined on the defensive side of the ball. He's good for mid-range, good at moving off the ball. Doesn't need to have the ball in his hands to be effective. I think Tad Conley is potentially, behind Bradley Kersey, the best shooter in this draft. We also, next up, have Dave Wilkins, a very unassuming name, but he's only 18 years old out of UCF. He's 6'6", he's 216 pounds. Wilkins is a good mid-range and three-point scorer. He's a solid playmaker for the small forward position, and he's got good instincts on defense. His potential at 18 years old is abounding. I mean, this guy can turn into anything pretty much at 6'6" as well. He's he's a project, don't get me wrong, but he's very, very open to being anything a team can make him to be. They just have to get over that lack of experience. And if I had to give him a comparison, it's really tough because he's so young. I would say Karis LeVert type player. Just a good all-around offensive weapon and defensive weapon as well. Next up, we have Gustavo Nanali. What a name. I mean, that's just a great name from Argentina. Gustavo is a bruising physical presence for whoever plays him. Good at scoring on the inside. Good at playing defense in the post and the perimeter. Athletic and just a high motor guy. He plays with energy, toughness, battles through screens, battles for rebounds and loose balls. Not a good offensive player, though. Nanali really needs to improve his offensive game. He's very reliant on scoring inside. Developing mid-range game would be good for him, or even a three-point game would be very good for him. Playmaking needs to work a little bit more, and perimeter defense, as I mentioned, is good, but his lateral quickness could use some improvement if we're talking about a long-term starter. Next up, we've got Sebastian Valentine from the small Vincennes University, 22 years old, 6'5". Valentine is a very, very interesting prospect. He is an elite defender, literally called a wing stopper. This guy is athletic, he's quick, he's strong. He's going to lock you up. He's going to score in the paint, and he's going to guard multiple positions, but he's not going to score a lot from the perimeter. He's not going to play make, and he's definitely not going to make his own shot. Valentine, if he wants to improve, if he wants to get better, he definitely needs to work on the offensive side of the ball. And at 22 years old, he's got some room to grow, but he's not as free as some of the younger guys here on this board. He's also getting comparisons to similar guys to Gustavo Nanali. He's going to get a Matisse Thybulle comparison, and we all know Matisse Thybulle, for a little bit there, looked like his career was over. It looked like he couldn't score enough to stay in the NBA despite being an elite defender, but he's kind of turned it around. He's kind of become an okay scorer. I think Sebastian Valentine can take a very similar route as far as his NBA career goes. Next up, we've got Travis Mogbo playing for UNC Charlotte. He's 22 years old, a small forward. This guy, very solid catch-and-shoot threat. He's athletic. He can hit from mid-range, and he can hit from three-point land. Mogbo needs to work on defense. He needs to work a little bit on getting better and more instinctive on the offensive side of the ball. Sometimes he just gets beat to the spot by his defender just because he's not as developed or polished as you would hope for coming out of 4 years of college. After him, we've got Tyson Ross, 6'8", very tall small forward out of University of California. Ross is a mid-range maestro who's got solid athletic options. He's a good rebounder for his position, and he's a solid three-point shooter. I like Ross as a prospect at just 20 years old. He's going late first round, early second round. He's got a lot of room to grow, in my opinion. Needs to work on shooting range. As I mentioned, three-point shooting is solid, but not great. Needs to work on ball handling. He's not the greatest creator. He's got, a lot of moments in college where the ball just gets taken away from him by a better defender. And on defense, he could use a little bit more consistency. I see Tyson Ross as a bit of a Tobias Harris hybrid type player with a strong mid-range game, athleticism, and rebounding for the small forward position. Next up, we have Craig Winnington, a 21-year-old 6'7" forward out of Bradley University. He's also 245, so this guy is a very big piece of an NBA player. Solid defender, one of the better perimeter defenders at the small forward position, using his athleticism to get in front of his guys, disrupt ball handlers, doing a great job at that, and solid scoring at the rim. But Winnington, what's really holding him back, he's got a good frame, he's got good instincts, he's got good defensive play-making ability, but he's just got to work on offense. He's not a good shooter, not a good playmaker, and not a great creator from the offensive side of the ball. I think Craig Winnington is one of the better options late in the first round, especially if you're looking for a wing, but he just doesn't have much offensive game. He's not really refined on the offensive side of the ball, and that's holding him back a whole lot. Another guy that's getting comparisons to PJ Tucker, maybe like a Jeremy Grant type guy, a blend of defensive toughness, athleticism, and inside scoring, but not the three-point shooting that you would expect from those guys. But he does have the potential at 21 years old to expand into those positions. The final guy we're going to take a look at today is Tors Vilson. Tors Vilson is another Latvian prospect. Maybe he's going to be the next Luka Doncic. So far, though, he doesn't look like he's getting as much hype. He's late first round, early second round to mid-red second round. Vilson, very good three-point shooter. He's a standout shooter in this draft. He is a great floor stretcher from the small forward position. He's pretty athletic for, his height and weight. Solid mid-range shooter and a pretty capable defender. Needs to work on his ball handling as his own, and his playmaking ability, and just to be a little bit more consistent on the defensive side of the ball. I think the comparisons for Vilson are Robert Covington and Joe Harris type guys. Joe Harris for the shooting, Robert Covington for the defense. He's got athleticism there as well. Tors Vilson, one of the more interesting prospects in this draft, especially with a late round pick, but coming from overseas. He's 24 years old. He's much older than a lot of the other guys on the board. I would not be surprised to see if he falls well into the second round just because of that age gap and that issue that a lot of teams do not like to have when they draft guys. And next time we do one of these, we will talk about the power forward and centers, as well as a few sleeper picks that may go late in the second round, that guys that are not getting as much hype as some of these other top draft picks. But that is our first draft outlook. I hope you all did enjoy this one. As always, be on the lookout for the next episode. Next time we'll be taking on the Jazz, and then probably the next episode after that will be the next recruiting outlook or NBA draft outlook as well. Let me know how you guys are feeling with this series. If you're enjoying it, make sure to hit the like button. If you're not, comment down below. Let me know what I can do different to make you enjoy it a little bit more. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all next time. Have a great day, everybody.
Sounds right.